Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, March 24th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 162 days, just a full baseball season away from football season. We're getting there. The game against Michigan in 246 days, and when the game against Michigan gets here, Kevin Noon, it is a game that I'm sure will once again be won in the trenches, and we're talking about the trenches today because we got a chance after spring practice number 4 to talk to Ohio State's offensive lineman, Ohio State's defensive lineman, so we're going to be talking all about line play today. Always one of my favorite interview sessions. I don't know what it is, those linemen have great personalities, always get good interviews, and today was no exception. I guess let's start with the offensive line. You got to talk to Carson Hinsman. Carson Hinsman is someone who is not necessarily someone who I expected to be one of the big stories this spring, but it sure sounds like he is running with the ones right now at center and could be a very big part of this fall's team.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those situations they bring in Victor Cutler. You think, oh, maybe that's going to be the center that they're going to go with. But it sounds like the move for Carson Hinsman to center has been in the works. And I don't think anybody necessarily expected Luke Whippler to leave as early as he did. But, you bring in Carson Hinsman. He gets his first look at right tackle, as it was told to him, a chance to see the speed of the game. Well, he got a chance to see the speed of the game, and now he's moved into center. He told a funny story about during fall camp. Jacob James was injured last year for one day or so he was thrust into a main position there with the twos. First snap right over Kyle McCord's head. He's like, oh, that was not good. But it all seems to be coming together now. He's feeling more comfortable there. He was asked, do you feel comfortable with all the line calls yet? He's like, oh, we're still learning all that. But there's so much in terms of the mechanics, the muscle memory. Center is a very different beast than a lot of the other offensive line positions. And, Carson seems to be doing a good job with all that.
Yeah, and Josh Frye, we got to talk to. Oh, sorry, not Josh Frye. Justin Frye. There we go. I got there eventually. These Frye guys from Indiana. There's too many of them, if you ask me. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the offensive line in some of these guys in particular, of course, and Carson Hinsman. Justin Frye talked about Carson Hinsman and how he was someone who, even as a true freshman, that's not a time you necessarily expect guys to sort of jump at you and jump off the page a little bit, jump off the film screen. He said he did. He said Hagrid Shabola did, and now those guys are kind of in that rotation, working to get a starting or certainly contributing role this year. Victor Cutler obviously in the mix still for that starting job. Jacob James still out this spring, but he's someone that Justin Frye also said is someone who he has been very actively engaged. He even though he's standing there with Justin Frye behind the snap, he's asking questions constantly, trying to stay engaged, taking those mental reps that they always talk about. So certainly not a done deal by any means on the center position, but that is something that Carson Hinsman certainly has not done anything to dissuade people from thinking he has what it takes to be Ohio State's starting center, at least after that first snap in that one practice last year. So onward and upward with the offensive line. A couple of guys we got to talk to at the tackle positions. We got to talk to Zen Michalski, got to talk to Josh Fryer. Zen Michalski is, sort of adjusting to life on the right-hand side of the line. He is working at right tackle this spring. He's someone that came to football pretty late. He started in, I think, his sophomore or junior season of high school. I'm now forgetting what he said. But he came to football very late and was, just sort of someone who he put on like 100 pounds in the span of about 18 to 24 months and sort of grew into a Big Ten-sized tackle prospect. And now, he has played left tackle his whole life in the limited amount of time he's played, and that has been a little bit of an adjustment to the right side for him. What was interesting is Josh Fryer, he was asked about, he was on the right side last year, now he's sort of adjusting to the left side. And he said, well, it's hard for Zen because this is the first time Zen's had to move positions. This is like the 6th time Josh Fryer's had to move positions because he was kind of all over the place. He was the 6th offensive lineman last year. And when you're the top backup, you end up kind of slotting in at a bunch of spots. He played in that Buffalo package where he was wearing number 41 and was an eligible receiver. So he's played basically just about everywhere except center, I think, at Ohio State at one point or another. So maybe not as much of an adjustment for him in terms of a new position this spring. You also got to talk to Donovan Jackson, who is someone that, Justin Frye, when Justin Frye talks about Donovan Jackson, it is just glowing. He talked about Jackson as someone who could basically play wherever they need him, wherever they want him. What did Donovan Jackson have to say?
Yeah, find somebody who loves you as much as Justin Frye loves Donovan Jackson. That's the goal right there. But, Donovan Jackson kind of joked, it's hard to imagine that he's one of the veterans on the offensive line now, and he is, because remember year one, he was kind of that sixth, seventh lineman, and didn't see a lot of time in terms of playing the position that he was brought in to play. Year two, plays guard. He said that he left a lot of plays on the field. He could do a lot better, and he feels like he's doing better. There was a conversation about whether or not there was speculation that he might slide out to tackle because of the loss of the two tackles and where things were. And he and Justin Frye had a conversation about it, and they just decided that it would be best to keep him at guard. And now he's the guy who's out there kind of correcting guys and getting guys lined up properly and doing the things that need to be done there. And he sees a lot of potential out of this line. He really feels that the interior line can be really strong. He sees strong tackle candidates out there. He wasn't ready to sit there and anoint anybody as this is who I think it should be. They're never going to do that. They're coached up too well to really give us that type of insight. But he's certainly feeling more comfortable at his guard position, and he wasn't going to be pigeonholed into a position. It was a situation. He was asked if the need arose to move outside, would you do it? He's like, I'm here as an offensive lineman. I'm not an interior offensive lineman. I'm not an outside offensive lineman. I'm an offensive lineman. I'm going to do whatever is asked of me, whatever is best for the team to win games and to make plays. So still doesn't sound like he's going to move out to tackle unless something crazy happens, but just know that there is that flexibility there.
You do sort of get the feeling, just talking to the guys and talking to Justin Frye, you sort of get the sense that, I don't know that they're locked in on here is our starting five for this fall, but you get the sense that they're maybe getting a little more comfortable with the fact that the answer is, the answer is there, that they are not going to necessarily have to kick a guard out to tackle or anything like that, that Josh Fryer is at least okay at left tackle right now, and Zen Michalski and Tegra Shabol are at least okay at right tackle, which, that if that's true, that certainly removes some of the lower possible outcomes for this team this year.
Absolutely. I mean, you want to sit there and be able to kind of know what the pieces are, but I mean, Ohio State has been, especially under Justin Frye, I mean, even prior to that, we want to cross-train you as much as possible. I mean, we know how difficult it can be to go from right to left and left to right because you're having to do everything in reverse. But they've got these guys, and they're so well trained in these types of situations. I mean, we only have to go back a couple of years to where they had to go really deep because a bad test and you weren't playing for a couple of weeks. So, Ohio State certainly has been able to do things the right way in terms of finding these guys and having the pieces. I think now it's just going to be a matter of getting these pieces coached up and game ready before Indiana here in, what was that again, 162 days?
Yeah,
100. It's crazy how quickly it's all coming along. We're obviously going to have an opportunity to see some more with some scrimmages and Student Appreciation Day and everything coming up. But even that we know is going to be a little bit of a slower speed. But for one of the big concerns coming into the season, what is offensive line going to look like? Everything we're hearing coming out of today sounds promising, but again, it is only March 24th or whatever it is.
Yeah, it does feel like coming into the spring, I think in my head, there was kind of are they going to have to import a left tackle from the transfer portal at the end of the spring because they're not going to have someone? I feel like that's less likely in my mind than it maybe was a couple weeks ago, which is good. I mean, that you would love to be able to do this internally because we talk all about the importance of cohesion with the offensive line and all these guys. The other thing that's encouraging, I think, is you have a couple second-year guys who are maybe, with Tegra Shabol at right tackle. He said he was working as the number 2 at right tackle right now, kind of behind, but, rotating in with the ones behind Zen Michalski. Carson Hinsman as the center. You're getting some guys who, there's obviously going to be a learning curve there, but those are young guys who, if you're ready to play in your second year like Donovan Jackson was last year, yeah, there's a learning curve, but also then you're setting yourself up for a multi-year starter, which is good down the line. It means, if guys are ready in the spring of their second year, well, that means they're probably pretty darn good football players. So that's encouraging, I think, for Ohio State as well. Flipping over to the other side of the line, we got to talk to the defensive linemen as well. JT Tuimoloau, he was someone else who was kind of like Donovan Jackson, where it's his third year. It feels like he just got here. He's draft eligible after this season. He's taught, he's not quite one of the old heads, but he's certainly one of the more veteran players, and he's looked at as one of the more veteran players in that room now, which is crazy that, JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer are the wily veterans in the defensive end room, but that's kind of where it is right now. He talked about taking on a little bit more of a leadership role. We talked all about him and his speech after the Michigan game last year and them staying engaged and all that. So you've already started to see that from him. He also talked about how he and Jack Sawyer, I think he has high expectations for he and Jack Sawyer now that they're kind of both defensive ends this year. It seems like, third year, potentially a contract year for both of those guys heading in, draft eligible after the season. That's obviously going to be a position where, if they get close to what the ceiling could be there with a couple former 5-stars on opposite ends of the line, that could be a pretty big tool for the Ohio State defensive line this year. Another potentially really big tool, and another guy who is that whole class is draft eligible potentially after this year, which is wild. Tyleik Williams. You got a chance to talk to Tyleik Williams. Is 91 on his way to being freed?
Well, you confused me at first because you're talking about big tools. So I was thinking you were talking about Tony, but no. All joking aside, yeah, Tyleik, he's kind of in the same position where we've seen it before. Why isn't he getting more snaps? Why isn't he getting more run? He feels that his body is getting in better shape. His endurance is getting better. I mean, obviously, it's a situation of where they roll so many guys in, but you have a lot of guys who are gone. Jerron Cage is gone. Teron Vincent is gone. I mean, you can go down the list. There's going to be more reps coming if Tyleik is game ready, and he feels that he as becoming one of the older guys. I mean, it's just crazy. I just feels like yesterday I was at his high school talking to him. He's somebody who's ready to take on that bigger role, to be able to show what he's capable of doing. He knows that people are always going to be drawn to watching what happens at the end, at the rush-in position, but feels that this team can be very impactful with some of the returning veterans, with like he and a Mike Hall, and then some of the young guys like a Hero Canoe. These guys that are going to be able to step up, but a lot of excitement out of Tyleik. He's always a kid that when you talk to him, you can see that he really enjoys it all. But did talk about that. I mean, at some point, he didn't have a couple years with football. Because of COVID and everything else, and you have to kind of fall back in love with the game of football. He seems to be very much in a relationship with football now. It is not complicated in terms of how you might put it on your on your MySpace page or whatever about it. It's complicated. It's not complicated. He loves football and he's ready for this season.
So would you say his Facebook status in terms of rotation the last couple of years has been random play? There's a little old school Facebook for you. No one needs old school Facebook or new school Facebook, but no, we're not here to talk about that either. One last thing I did want to touch on before we got going is the fourth guy. You mentioned that fourth guy in that 2021 recruiting class at the defensive line, Mike Hall. He's someone who didn't play a ton last year, and that was injuries. And what was interesting to me was people kept asking about the injuries because you sort of didn't ever quite feel like you got the whole story last year, and people kept asking about the injuries, and he just didn't want to talk about it. He wanted to move forward, and that just what put that behind him. Larry Johnson talked about how the sky is the limit with him. If he's healthy, the sky is the limit there. Sounds like he's healthy, so that's another player to keep an eye on this year. We're going to have we talked to a bunch of other guys as well, other offensive linemen, other defensive linemen. We'll have shows the next couple days, looking at giving you some of those interview clips, some of the more interesting things that we heard from some of the other guys that we maybe didn't get a chance to talk about here. We'll have those coming up this weekend, and of course a recap of the scrimmage on Saturday. So that'll be your Sunday morning show. So you'll have all that stuff coming up this weekend, and you can find all sorts of coverage, much more on all of this stuff at BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'm going to guess Tony Gerdeman will have a note and quote book of some sort coming up. There he goes. He's contractually obligated. See how easy that was? We'll have all those interview clips. If you just want to watch them all, we'll have them all on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. So make sure you check out all of that stuff as well. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.